In this video, I'll show you how I built my new workbench for electronic and smaller mechanical projects. I built it in less than a day from stock parts that you can pick up from IKEA and a hardware store for less than 150 euros, and I used only very few tools for this. If I can do this, so can you. Just a word of caution before we get started. This workbench is intended for light to medium rough work, soldering, assembly, some drilling, sawing and filing. It's not a carpenter's or welder's workbench, and it will probably fail catastrophically when properly abused by a 200-pound gorilla. If you need something that can withstand these forces, this is not the project for you. Here's what we need. The shopping list is short. From IKEA, get two separate HEJNE 78 by 50 by 171 cm storage rack sets, 25 euros each, and 3 additional sets of 2 HEJNE vertical posts, 3 euros each. You should end up with 14 posts in 7 packs of 2. Also, get a LILLTRÄSK kitchen countertop, white, 186 by 63 cm for 17 euros. From the hardware store, you need a few packs of screws. I used some drywall screws I had left over from a previous project. Drywall screws are great because you can get large packs for little money, but other countersunk screws should do as well. I used about 60, 25 and 35 mm screws each, although you'll probably get away with substantially less than that. You'll also need some wood glue. In total, the parts from the hardware store will probably set you back about 15 euros, making it a total of less than 100 euros so far. I also decided to add some main sockets to my workbench. If you want to do so as well, get 2 robust sockets, a junction box and the required cables while at the hardware store. That shouldn't cost much more than 40 euros. Note that I won't be showing you how to do the electrical installation. If you don't already know how to do that, get some competent help, because I don't want you to kill yourself. Alternatively, get a pre-wired extension lead with a multi-socket outlet suitable for wall mounting. That should do as well. Tool-wise, you should have a good cordless drill, not surprising for that amount of screws, with some decent screw bits and a 3mm drill. If possible, try to get a countersink drill. I used an electric jigsaw to cut down the wood, but any other saw will do, except perhaps for a chainsaw. A miter saw would be ideal, but a hand saw will do as well. Also, if you don't own one yet, get a carpenter square. It's a very useful tool to have around. Other than that, we'll just need the usual suspects: hammer, screwdrivers, some clamps, a ruler or tape measure and a bit of sandpaper. First, unpack all of the wood and check the HEJNE components for cracked or bent parts. Select 6 posts that are mostly straight and undamaged. We'll use these as the primary legs of the workbench. Don't worry, we'll reinforce them later. For a countertop height of about 98 cm, we need posts of approximately 94.5 cm in length. I'd recommend not to measure the length from the end, but to measure 2.25 cm from the center of the 8th hole instead, because we need that end to be flush with the shelves we'll mount there. When in doubt, a millimeter too short will be better than one too long. Don't forget to mark the ends that you cut and go over the edges with some sandpaper. A word of caution: if you want to lower the countertop, you can easily do so by cutting down the posts further, as long as they are all of the same length and the top end stays flush with the shelves. However, if you want to raise the countertop, you'll need to buy 4 to 6 additional vertical posts, because we'll need the pieces we just cut off later on. Since the countertop will be fixed to the rack with screws from the underside, it's much easier to build the workbench upside down. Unpack the LILLTRÄSK plate now, but leave it face down on the cardboard it came with to prevent the upper side from being scratched prematurely. Identify and mark the front and back side. If necessary, you can now cut the plate to width. Luckily, I didn't need to. Then, mark the center of the plate and place 2 HEJNE shelves upside down onto it. Align them and mark their positions. I'm using white painter's tape for this, so that my markings are better to see. If you want to run some cables between the sides of the rack like I did, you will probably need to make some cutouts now in order to feed the cables through later on. Then, carefully place the shelves at the center posts to ensure they stay aligned, pre-drill the holes through the shelves into the countertop and fasten the shelves with screws from the inside out. I probably overdid it with the screws here, but better safe than sorry. Note that it is really important to pre-drill all of the screw holes. The quality of the wood is sometimes so bad that it will split right away if you put in a screw without drilling a hole for it first. Now, if the legs we cut in the first step ended up just a tiny bit too short, the entire weight of the countertop will rest on just 8 screws, which are probably made of factory-grade Chinesium. I decided not to trust in that alone and added some support by cutting down 2 of the leftover pieces from the first step to 53 cm and mounting them centered under both shelves. They will be supported by horizontal beams later on. Now screw in the 6 legs we cut down earlier. Also screw in the shelves that will be the bottommost layer. That's something I should have done but didn't. Hindsight is 20/20 after all. Next, take 4 of the remaining HEJNE posts and place them horizontally across the shelves and the support struts. Mark their length and cut them to size. Again, a bit too short is better than too long here. Do not let these beams protrude over the edge of the vertical posts. If you want to mount the sockets and run some cables, now would be a good time to do so, while you can still easily reach everything and don't have to thread cable through parts that have already been screwed on. Then, glue and screw on the horizontal beams. Ensure that the outer beams rest on the support struts so that they can take up the load. The inner beams won't connect to the struts because the shelf edges are thicker than the struts, but they will add stability and support the shelves nonetheless. Oh, and when screwing in from the front and the back side, make sure that the screws don't meet in the middle. Now mount all of the remaining shelves in any configuration you would like. As I said, I should have screwed in the bottommost shelves before adding the horizontal beams because I somehow goofed up on the alignment there. Just a mistake you don't need to make. When mounting the shelves, you need to do something that I would strongly advise against under normal circumstances. Drive in the mounting screws so much that they dig into the wood and their heads come almost flush with the surface of the wood. You might want to take a Forstner or spade drill and make some countersink holes instead, but I confess I was too lazy for this, except for one screw where the hole went right through a knot and the wood was too hard for the screw to dig into. No matter how you do this, you need to make sure that the screws are nearly flush with the outer surface of the vertical posts or they'll be in the way for the next step. Now we'll add some reinforcements to the legs. Take 3 of the as of yet unused vertical posts and cut them in half rather precisely. Then place them onto the outer horizontal beams and mark their length as precisely as possible. Also mark where each post goes. Cut them to size. This should only take off a centimeter or so, which is why you need to divide the post exactly in half in the first place. In this case, a millimeter too long is better than 1 too short, because you can always sand the leg reinforcements down later on. Now glue and screw on the reinforcement posts, making sure that they connect firmly to the outer horizontal beams. Then, if necessary, make sure that the undersides of the leg posts align by sanding them down. The next part is optional, but after the wobbly hell of the metal storage rack I used as a makeshift workbench before, I wanted to add some more struts for stability. Take 2 of the remaining cut-off pieces and cut one end to a 45-degree angle. Then place them diagonally across the outer faces. There's no need to do this super precisely unless you really want to, just eyeball it. Mark the other end and cut it to length. Then fix these braces with some screws to the legs and to the shelf sides as well. Finally, flip the workbench around onto its legs, move it into position and connect the sockets to the mains. So this is my new workbench in its final position. I've already moved most of the stuff from the older workbench and from some of the shelves down here into the storage area. I have to say I'm pretty happy with it. I have to shim one leg a bit up, but that's mostly due to the uneven floor down here. Stability is very good. If I lean on it or try to move it, I can only move it by a few millimeters, so it should be good for most of the work I do. I'm still trying to think of something to clamp on a bench vise here, but that's a different project. Yeah, for under 100 euros in building material and some additional 35 euros for the electrical installation material, I'm really happy with that, so should be good to go.